Hello and welcome to another episode of the Songbird Sade Knits podcast. My name is Mercedes and I'm coming to you from Guelph, Ontario, also the traditional lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. It's late November, rainy day. I'm sitting inside in my living room with the wood stove on, and my partner has taken the baby on a walk, but I don't think he'll be out for very long given the weather. So we'll just see how this goes. I'll try to get as much knitting in as possible and as much sharing as I can. I hope you are well. It's been a while since my last podcast. And yeah, it's nice to get this brief chance to sit down with you and to talk about my knitting and other crafts as well. There's a finished object in today's episode that's not knitting, but it is wool related. So before we get into the knitting, I just wanted to share what I've been up to. I guess decorating for Christmas, that's kind of fun. I don't have that many decorations because our house is small, but I've put up what I have, and it's nice to have the festive atmosphere inside, even if it's still quite warm outside. And given the weather, I was able to plant some garlic in our raised garden beds. If you follow me on Instagram, I posted a little reel, I guess, of that process. I thought I'd basically missed my opportunity, and I had a round of planting when there was snow on the ground, but the ground still hadn't frozen, and I thought that was it. But then we had a thaw, and I took the opportunity yesterday when it was sunny outside to plant the second of our 2 raised garden beds with garlic. So I think I planted about somewhere between 80 to 90 cloves. So I don't want to be overexcited about how they might turn out, but we've tried garlic last year and it was a wonderful crop. It was so easy to plant, so easy to maintain, and easy to harvest. And you get 2 harvests from garlic. You get the scapes in the spring, and then later in the summer you get the heads that you then have to cure before you store them. I'm sure you can eat them fresh, but I think you cure them. I don't know. I didn't try them fresh, but anyway, it all turned out really well last year, so I thought I would invest a little more in it this year because you can't have too much garlic in my experience. Yeah, so let's get into the knitting. I have a few finished objects, not too many. Not too many. Some little things. So let's start with what I'm wearing. This, I think, is the first time I've worn this in the podcast, and it is probably the last time you'll ever see it in this incarnation, because I'll probably frog this. Anyway, this is called Nuuk, spelt, I think, N-U-U-K. I don't know who the designer is. All the information will be in the description box below, and you can Google search the things that I'm talking about. But it was published in Lichen magazine a few issues ago, and it's just, all it is a top-down raglan vest or slipover or t-shirt, whatever you like to call this type of garment. I'll just stand up. Mine is a little bit cropped. Great, easy pattern. I enjoyed working on it. I knit this a few years ago. The reason why I'll probably frog it is I don't get much wear out of it. It's knit in Topsy Farms heavy worsted weight yarn in the heathered green color, which is a lovely color. Maybe, hopefully you can sort of see the heathering there. It's really nice. And it's a lovely yarn, very durable yarn. The reason why I don't wear this garment very much is that the yarn is ill-suited for the pattern. This is a really, really heavy vest, and it's a top-down raglan with no shaping in the waist or anything. So when I wear this, it's either too hot to just be worn on its own, or it is too, what is that right? Yeah, too hot to be worn on its own, or too cold to be, or the weather's too cold for it to be worn on its own. It doesn't work as a vest, and it doesn't really go well over things because of how bulky the yarn is. There's basically no drape to this at all. And the original pattern in the photos, you can see that the yarn that they used was kind of, it had some drape to it and some movement. And I think that's what you need for this kind of garment. And I knit this a while ago, so I guess I just wasn't really sensitive to that at that point. I hadn't knit enough things to have that knowledge. So I don't feel bad about it. It's, you know, knitting is an experience and a journey, and it is what it is. So if I do decide to frog this, I've thought of doing this for a long time, and I keep not doing it. But every time I put it on, I go through so many other pieces of clothing to try to get it to work with something, and it's always a struggle. And then I settle on some sort of black dress, and that's all it goes with, and I don't love it in that context. I just wear it to get some use out of it. So I probably will frog it, and I'm making a blanket currently with leftover scraps of worsted weight yarns, and I had some leftover of this, and so that's in the blanket. So I figure I'll just repurpose this in the blanket, and it'll have a new life that I think will be better. So anyway, that's the Nuuk. I recommend the pattern. I would knit it again just with a lighter feeling worsted weight yarn and something that is more drapey, like maybe something with alpaca. I maybe would even knit this in a plant fiber yarn, perhaps a wool and plant fiber mix. So that's what I'm wearing. For finished objects today, I'll start with the knitting. The most fun thing that I've finished since last time is this really sweet little Lopa pesa for my baby. This will actually be for him when he's a little bit older. So I don't know when it'll fit him. He is a big boy, but sorry about that. I think the lighting is funny, but there might actually be a little bit of smoke in the atmosphere. So I'll try to hold things over here. Yeah, so this was a very quick knit, bulky weight yarn, Alafoss Lopi, and I love knitting these sweaters. I feel that they are good for everybody, so everyone in the family. So now my son has one, and it was made with leftovers from an adult-sized sweater. So I'm really happy to have this finished and put away as a future gift for him. And this pattern is from a book that I've shared with you before several times in the podcast. It's Alafoss Lopi number 18, I think is the book, and it's Istex has published many of these books with books of patterns for Alafoss Lopi and other of their yarns, but this one is the only book of theirs that I own, and I chose it specifically because it has very traditional, older style Lopi sweaters in it, and that's what I wanted when I bought it. I just wanted a really traditional Lopi sweater, and it has lots in it, and I've knit several patterns from it and definitely have plans to knit more. So I continue to go back to that book over and over again. So it was a good investment. Another thing I finished is a child-sized, toddler-sized watch cap hat. I showed in the previous episode that I've knit a couple of these, and this is leftover yarn from my weekender sweater. So this is an alpaca, bamboo, and merino mix, actually, from Twin Pines Alpaca. And this is the same weight as the yarn called for in the pattern. So I think I just followed the correct size for the toddler hat. And yeah, it turned out the gauge is correct. It turned out according to the pattern. The previous hats I knit them at a different gauge, so I had to just use a different stitch count, which is really easy to do with this pattern. So that's done. Again, going in the gift pile for future. I'll just show you, I have one more finished object, but I'll just show you, I still have more of this yarn. So I'm working on a hat for myself, the watch cap hat again, and this is the adult small size. So it's, you know, is it 2x2 rib? I think it's 2x2 rib, so yeah, it is. So I just knit on this, you know, whenever I have time. I'm not in a rush to finish it, although it'll be nice to have finished because it is a thinner yarn. All of my hats that I have, I've knit in thicker yarns, so it'll be nice to have something, a beanie that's a little more slender and doesn't make my head look so bulky. So yeah, I look forward to having that done. Moving on to, no, I have one more finished object to show, and this is not knitting. This is a punch needle project. Yeah, I really enjoy punch needle. I've done a few pieces that look like this, like a circle, you know, your regular embroidery hoop, and then I find a piece of plywood to glue the finished fabric to in the end, and then I can reuse my embroidery hoops. And then what I'll do with this, it's not quite done. I need to put a little mount on the back so that it can be hung on the wall, just hooked on a nail. Yeah, but I love doing punch needle. It's pretty quick. It's fun to be creative with the design and the color choices. And yeah, sometimes I design my own images, as in this case, but sometimes I'll just trace from books that I have. And I did try that with this one first. I have a mushroom guide to Ontario, so I traced a bunch of mushrooms and made sort of a composition. But then when I started the punch needle part, I realized many of the mushrooms were just too small, and punch needle is sort of a rough embroidery technique, and they didn't really look like mushrooms. The edges were not defined enough to make your eye think, ah, that's a mushroom shape. So I abandoned that. That might be a nice composition for needle and thread embroidery. So I've saved the tracing that I did, and might be able to translate that to needle and thread embroidery at some future date. So what I did, I just did my own mushroom drawing, and yeah, just, it's always an experiment. Sometimes they don't look good and you just rip it out and you know, save the yarn and start again. And sometimes you actually have to finish the project before you know if it's going to look good or not. And that was the case with this. The mushroom was really looking like an umbrella, and I didn't know if all the colors would look good together, but I decided to persevere and just see what it looked like in the end. And I'm happy with it. I think it's cute. It's kind of fun, and this will be a gift for somebody. And yeah, I really like doing these projects. They bring me a lot of joy, and I find them just these little nuggets of creativity, and yeah, they're really fun to do in between my longer knitting projects. Speaking of longer knitting projects, in the last episode, I spoke to you about my Marie Wallin Muckle row pattern that I have been knitting on for a while now, and I was lamenting that it's too large, and I really don't know what to do about it at this point because I have most of the body knit and I don't want to frog the whole thing. And thank you all for your suggestions, by the way, of how to fix it, or how to save the wool, or salvage the project itself. I really appreciated all of your input. And it helped me, reading all of your comments helped me to clarify what it is that I want to do with this. And I realized that I want to continue and make it into a sweater. I really want this piece to be a sweater. But I think that will entail sort of creating an entirely new pattern up here. It's a bottom-up sweater, so the yoke part isn't going to work. What I came up with as an idea is to do a drop shoulder construction instead of a yoke. So let me show you. This is the body. I just want to mention, by the way, that yes, I am knitting at a different gauge than what's in the pattern, so it's bigger than the size that I'm knitting. However, the ultimate measurements, the actual measurements of this, match what the measurements would be for my size, if that makes any sense. So I'm knitting a size small or extra small, but my actual size would be the size small in the pattern, and that's what this is turning out to be. So it's the case that the fit of the sweater is too big, if that makes any sense. It's not just my gauge, it's that the measurements for my size would create a sweater that would be unflatteringly large, particularly in the yoke area once the sleeves get added. So that's quite confusing, and if you look on Ravelry at other people's projects of this pattern, you'll see that a lot of people have this issue. I don't know whether it's gauge in all the circumstances or if it's the pattern, but there is an overwhelming amount of people in the project section who say the sweater turned out larger than they thought it should, or who said the fit was just too big. So just a warning, if you're going to make this sweater, that you may wish to, before you get to the stage that I'm at, take this into consideration. So anyway, this is the body. As you can see, when I hold it up to my shoulders, it overlaps my shoulders. So to continue as per the pattern means I would make this into it's a circular yoke. So I'd be knitting the sleeves and then attaching them, and then the shoulders would be even wider once the sleeves are attached. So you can already see that that's just going to be way, 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 way too big. However, this is not that much wider than, say, my Weekender sweater by Andrea Mowry, which is an oversized fit. It's only a couple inches bigger in the body. So I figured I can actually make this a drop shoulder construction. And what that will do is, instead of this being just the body width with the sleeves attached on the side, it will be the full width for the body and the shoulders. And then the sleeves will be attached to the side, and it'll just distribute this width across my shoulders as opposed to it just being for the body itself. So that's what I think is a pretty good idea for helping to fix this fit. It does mean that I have to then come up with the pattern basically for the whole shoulder construction and for the sleeves to fit properly. So I haven't quite figured that out yet. I'm going to be relying on the pattern, the Weekender pattern, to help with that, and I might just use some of the numbers for my size to figure out how this is going to work, and use the shoulder detail that's in that pattern. But I might do something different. I might figure out how to do a saddle shoulder construction, and maybe, I'm not really sure how that works. I've never done it before, so I'd have to look into that. We'll see. I don't know yet, but I'm not in a rush to have this done. But I did start the sleeve because I wanted to see how wide the sleeve would be, if that would be too much. And honestly, I think the sleeve is going to be fine. And I'll just stop the increases when I think it's big enough, because now that I'm doing a drop shoulder, I can make the sleeves any size I want, and I can make the body any length that I want. And yeah, so, and the reason why I'm knitting the sleeves bottom up, by the way, instead of picking up stitches once I have the armholes done on the body, is because the body color work is knit bottom up, and I didn't want to change that for the sleeves because it will look different whether it's knit bottom up or top down. So I wanted to keep it the same, which means that I'll just have to sew the sleeve onto the body instead of picking up stitches and knitting it, which is not my preferred method, but I had to make some sort of concessions with this, and that was one that I chose. So anyway, so yeah, I've started the color work on the sleeve, and I'm almost actually done the color work section and I'm into the plain stockinette, but I did make a mistake. This is all fine, but once I started this, which is a flower motif, well, flower, yeah, it'll look like this. I realized I'd messed up some of the color work just a little bit, no big deal. But then this is when in the pattern the background color changes. So here the background color is gray, and then when you get up here, the background color is white. And I remember when I knit the body that the first choice that I made for which color to hold dominant ended up not looking right. And the thing is, I didn't take notes on this, so I can't remember if I changed which color I was holding dominant or if I didn't. I just can't remember what I did. So in this case, I changed which color I was holding dominant. So if you're unfamiliar with this, I would say look it up on the internet because it can be a little tricky to understand. But basically, when you're doing color work, you hold one strand in the right hand, one in the left hand, and one of those colors will pop more than the others. Whichever one you're holding in your right hand is the non-dominant color, so that'll be the background color. And in this case here, as you can see, the background is gray. So I was holding the gray, what I would call the main color here, in my right hand. And then at some point it switches. And as you can see, it's hard to perceive at first, but as you can see now, starting here, the white is the background color and the gray is what you want to stand out in the foreground. However, because it's a fine gauge and you can see this white here is just one stitch, I wonder if it's better to hold the white dominant so that it stands out against the gray. I don't know. I can't remember what I did. So I feel I'm gonna have to knit that section first and just see if it matches the look of this. And unfortunately, if it doesn't, then I'll have to pick back, but I do want this to look really good. So that might be the only way that I can solve that problem. Yeah, so no progress on figuring out how it's all going to come together, but I just wanted to share with you the sleeve and my idea for the top. And if you have any suggestions on, you know, how that construction, the drop shoulder construction might work, or what to do about the shoulders, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear. Okay. Other works in progress. Something I forgot to share last time that I've been working on since the summer, it's been set aside a little bit, is this shawl right here, which is the Briogarter shawl by Stephen West. And I think it's an older pattern. I came across it in the Gentle Knitters podcast, and I thought that looks so, it should look so simple. It looks like the kind of thing you can just easily knit on without too much thought, but it has interest. So you'll want to knit a whole shawl's worth of this stitch because it's a four row repeat. Yes, I think it's a 4-row repeat. So, you know, it keeps you paying attention, but it is a rhythmic knit, which is nice. So what it is it has, sorry, this might be difficult with the gray and the green in the background showing gray and green. It has brioche in the two-color brioche in the middle of the shawl, And then on the wings of the shawl, it's just 2-color garter. So you have 2 sides to the shawl. You have the non-dominant color side, so this is, you know, technically the back side, and then you have whatever color you're holding dominant on the right side. So I've chosen the gray here, and then the background is green. So yeah, this shawl is something that I selected to help me use up some yarns that I had that I didn't really have a plan for. So this green yarn I found at a thrift store, and I've mentioned it before. I think it's a Shetland yarn, and it's sort of a heathered green with some white in it. And then the gray is this yarn that I got from Custom Woolen Mills. Beautiful yarn, beautiful wool, but it's a single ply, or like single strand, done on a mule spinner. And I've mentioned this before, I knit the entirety almost of the Woodford's cardigan in this before realizing that the yarn is not balanced. So it has quite an irregular, heavy twist to it. You can see that when I pull it tight. Let's see if I can show you this. When I pull it tight, it's nice and straight, and as I release the tension, it crimps and twists and goes back over itself. That's an unbalanced yarn, and that's because it's a single ply. It doesn't have another ply to sort of grip onto and to relieve the energy of that twist. So it just twists in on itself, and when you knit with this, it creates a skewed, biased garment. So I really have been struggling to figure out what to do with this yarn. So I thought pairing it with another yarn that was nice and balanced. This is a 2-ply. And pairing it with a stitch pattern that that isn't just stockinette would help. So I can't really tell because, excuse me, my allergies have come back because of the thaw that we've had. Excuse me, so anyway, pardon me. I hope that this will hide the twist in the yarn a little bit, but it's also a shawl, so I figure even if it's a little bit biased, once you throw a shawl on and you're wrapping it around yourself, you will definitely not notice that twist. And it's not a shawl that's, you know, lacy and you want to showcase the stitches a lot. It's more just about the color and the texture. So I figure if it does reveal that it's twisted, it's really not going to bother me that much, and it's not going to be something that's very noticeable. So I hope that that will be the case, and yeah, in the meantime, I'm enjoying working on this. Excuse me. It is brioche though, and I've never done brioche before this project, so I found if I was knitting on this every couple days, I could very easily pick up where I left off, but I went back to it after, you know, a month of it sitting, and I made a mistake. I started on the wrong row, and I can see that now that I'm looking at it. So I have to unpick that row and just figure out where I am in the 4-row repeat and start again there. So that's a bit unfortunate, but once I pick it up again, I might just take notes on how to figure out where I am, just because it's unfamiliar to me at this point, and I can't articulate what the rule is for figuring out where you are in brioche, so I'll just have to take a note on that once I pick it up again. Okay, this is the final work in progress I want to share with you, and it's one that I'm really happy about. I just needed something easy to knit on. I actually am doing a test knit for somebody that I won't finish, unfortunately, because I thought I thought I would have the time, and then, you know, you can't predict how your baby is going to change from day to day, and he changed his sleeping pattern, and not only are we not sleeping anymore, at night we don't get any free time because he can't be put down to bed. So we actually have him sleeping with us in the living room while we have the lights almost entirely out, and we are talking quietly and just keeping a calm atmosphere. So it's pretty much impossible to knit on something other than stockinette stitch or just, you know, ribbing or something like that. I can't have a pattern that I have to be looking at every few minutes to you know what I'm doing, and I can't have knitting that I really have to be able to look at because it's dark. So that's that, unfortunately. So I really wanted to feel good about something, and I really just wanted my hands to have something to work with. So I cast on a few weeks ago for this beautiful top-down raglan cropped sweater by Kate Davies. This is the Doocot, and I'm knitting it in Hillesvag Tinde in, oh, what do they call this colorway? I don't know what they call it. It's, maybe they call it Guelph. It's basically a greenish brass color, like a yellowy, brassy green color. And all of the Hillesvag Tinde is heathered. It's dyed over top of a gray yarn. So you have this undertone of gray. It's one of my favorite yarns. It is very rustic feeling, fuzzy, and hard wearing, doesn't really pill very much, and I just love the colors. I really like the heathered look, and I love the dark undertone. I find that very unique, and it kind of reminds me of Lettlopi a little bit in the colors that they have. But yeah, I really enjoy knitting with it, and I love this color. It's kind of like an olive green actually, but this is just a little more gold. So yeah, it has a little bit of a poof sleeve, like a little bit of ballooning happening, but not too much, just a subtle one, which I really like. And then it has just ribbing on the bottom, and there's no shaping in the body, and the ribbing is nice because it's a special ribbing with a bit of slip stitches. And just reading a text, my partner checking in to see that he's okay to continue walking. I'm gonna say yes. Okay, yeah, so we have a bit more time then. Yes, the ribbing is nice. It has a slip stitch in it. So what that means is you don't have to go down a needle size for the ribbing, because the slip stitch kind of keeps it tidy and keeps it from flaring out. And yeah, it keeps it from being too stretchy, and it cinches in a little bit, you can see at the body, but not that much. So I really liked that. And it also creates this really nice textured ribbing. Perhaps it's hard to see unless you compare it exactly to other ribbing, but the slip stitches make the knit stitches kind of pop. And so it's a little more of a textured rib than just a regular 1x1. And I really like that. I wasn't sure about it when I started it, but I'm really happy with the result. And I'm happy overall with this sweater. It fits really well, and it's the kind of thing that I will wear a lot and just have a lot of ease just grabbing and putting on. It'll go well with pants, with skirts, with dresses, with anything. So I'm happy about that, happy to almost have it done so that I can actually wear it and enjoy it this fall and this winter. So I have to do the other sleeve, and then you pick up stitches and put on the collar. So yeah. Oh, I want to also mention about this pattern. One nice thing is that instead of doing short rows to get that neckline shaping, you actually knit back and forth before joining in the round. And I, as far as I know, I don't think I've ever done that before, but I really liked that. I found there was less opportunity for an error to occur. Sometimes with short rows, you know, if you're not paying attention, you might not count the same on both sides, and that's definitely happened to me a number of times. So this was much, much easier to do. And not that the look of short rows ever bothers me, but if it's the kind of thing that bothers you, if you use this technique instead, you don't see any short rows at all. It just looks like a, you know, a continuous knit fabric, which it is. So I really liked that. So that's the Doocot. Okay. And well, this isn't, I think we'll talk now a little bit about plans, because I don't really have anything else in progress to show you at the moment, but I do have some planny type things to talk about. Let me get that. Oh. Okay. So, in anticipation of the winter and being outside with my son and maybe having to carry him a lot, you know, just in my arms or in a carrier, I was thinking about what kinds of coats I'll be able to wear outside, because I think my regular winter coats, a couple of them just aren't going to work at all. And I was thinking, you know, the bulk of scarves and all the other accessories that you have to put on to be warm in the winter. And I was thinking the scarf might really interfere with carrying him. His head is going to be on my chest all the time, and the scarf is going to be in the way. He could be pulling on it. It could get untied, and then I have to, you know, deal with that. So I thought I really need what is sometimes called a dicky, or just a neck warmer, I think is the more common term now. I've never had a garment like this before, but it seems really practical. So if you're not familiar with it, it's just a turtleneck that then has sort of a chest piece, almost like a breastplate piece of armor, like something like that. And so it just has a chest piece, and then it goes down the back a little bit, but it doesn't have arms, and it doesn't really have a full body, and it's not really usually attached, the front and the back. It's just the neck that sort of goes on, and then the rest are flaps. And then the idea is then you can put a coat or whatever over top, and you don't need a scarf in that case. So if you're not already wearing a turtleneck sweater, you can put this neck warmer on, and it'll stay in place, it'll keep your chest and your back and your neck warm without you having to fuss with a scarf. So I thought that's exactly what I need. And yeah, so there are lots of patterns for these types of garments or accessories now. I picked one from Petite Knit. I think the one I picked is called the Terrazzo neck. I'll put it down below. And so I'll be using her pattern more as a recipe, because I already had the yarn that I wanted to use, and I couldn't really find a pattern that matched my gauge, my yarn, my needles, and was also a pattern that I liked. So I went with her pattern, and I'll just try to make it work with what I have. So again, I'm using the single ply beautiful yarn from Custom Woolen Mills. I'll show you, I still have a skein. So that's the yarn with its mule logo. And I'll say, I have other yarn from Custom Woolen Mills. I have their 2-ply, and I haven't knit with it yet, but it looks wonderful. The wool is so beautiful, very rustic, and I just love it. So it's just the single ply that I find hard to use. But I'm going to give it a go and make a neck warmer with it. So I'm going to hold this double. Let me just put my yarn on the ground here. I'm going to hold it double, and I'm adding a strand of silk mohair. This is silk mohair from Lichen and Lace, and the colorway, it's their Marsh mohair, and I don't know what this colorway is. I simply can't remember, but it's a silvery gray. It looks white here, but it's definitely silvery gray. So it has light gray, and then there'll be sections with a bit of like a more charcoal gray. And I'm holding it together with my dark gray here, and it's creating not quite a marled fabric, but just almost like a tweed maybe. And of course there's a nice little halo and then the little flecks of silver that will be in this fabric. And this is on 5.5mm needles. So I'm going to make my neck warmer out of this, and I think that'll be really nice. It'll be soft, it'll be very warm, and it'll match pretty much anything, and it'll use up some yarn that I dearly want to use and treat well. So so yeah, I'll be casting on for that soon. I just need to make sure that I figure out the size that will work best for me. And it's one of those things that it's not a sweater. It doesn't have to be perfect, you know, fit perfectly. It just has to fit well enough. And if it is skewed because of the single ply, well, it'll be underneath something for the most part, so it won't really be noticeable. And yeah, I think it'll create a really beautiful fabric. So I'm looking forward to starting on that. And once I finish the Kate Davies Doocot sweater, which will be soon, I think, I want to cast on immediately for another sweater. And I'm going to choose something again that's easy to knit on when I really don't have, you know, all the other factors in my favor. So I think what I'm going to cast on next is a design by Jenifer Steingas. What is this one called? I'll put it down below. It's an interesting yoke of hers. It's instead of the design being oriented this way, it's oriented horizontally. So it has sort of, you know, like a woodsy, twiggy, branchy pattern, but oriented, branching sort of like this, going across the chest. And it looks really cool. I think depending on the yarn you use or the color choice, it can look a little strange. So, but then I've seen some projects where it looks fantastic. So hopefully I have selected the right colors and it'll work out for me. And usually with Jenifer Steingas, I never use the yarn that she recommends in her patterns. I don't know why this is the case. I think I've knit 2 or 3 of her yokes all in Lettlopi, and I'm going to do that again because I love Lettlopi. I love Icelandic yarn primarily. It's one of my favorites to work with. So anyway, I'm going to use Lettlopi again, and I'm going to be doing the body of the sweater in this green color. I would say it's sort of a hemlock. Let's go with hemlock green. It's a dark heathered green. And I'm going to pair it with this. This is I think this is the beige color. They call it beige heather. So this is color 0086, and this is color 1407. So that's probably what I'll cast on next. I know there's some color work involved, and I'll have to pay attention to the chart for that. But I find with color work yoke sweaters, if it's just a little bit of color work on the yoke, that really, it's not that much knitting, and it keeps you interested, and you can knit on that when you find the time, and then the rest is just stockinette. So I think that'll be okay, and that'll be a really nice sweater to have this cold season. So I don't really have many green sweaters, and that's why I have, you know, I bought this for the Doocot. This is the Hillesvag Tinde, and I bought this for a color yoke because I really wanted to get some darker greens in my wardrobe. So that's what I'll be working on next. And then who knows what I'll cast on after that. We might be going on a trip in the spring, and I would want to knit a few things for that, more in lighter fabrics, lighter plant fibers. So in anticipation of that, I did get enough to make another ranunculus, but this time entirely in plant fiber. And so I got this Nuuk Lyocell in sort of a creamy ivory color, and it has quite a sheen. You can kind of see that coming through on the camera. And I've never knit with this before, but I have knit with cotton, and I really don't like knitting with cotton, and I don't like wearing cotton. It's okay if it's mixed with wool. I have a few garments where it's mixed with wool, and I don't mind it in that case. But just the, I think it's the dryness of cotton, the dry feel combined with the, well, it stretches when you wear it. I don't like that, and I don't know, it just, it's a material that I really don't like working with, and I don't like wearing. So I thought I'd give this Lyocell a try, and it says it's I think Lyocell is made from bamboo, but I think it could also be made from other plant fibers. It's supposed to be a more sustainable option than cotton. And yeah, it's obviously a heavily manufactured fiber, but I think it feels like it'll have a nice drape, and it feels softer, much softer than cotton. It feels like bamboo. So I think I'm going to enjoy that, and it'll make a beautiful ranunculus, and I'm looking forward to having a ranunculus not made of wool, because all of mine are made with wool and mohair, so they're quite warm actually, and it'll be fun to have one that I can wear in the summer. So I might cast that on after my yoke sweater, but we'll just see what time of year it is at that point, and what I'm inspired by at that time. I will just get into the last few things that I wanted to share with you. I'm just going to show you this work in progress. I have shown this before, and I really don't think I've touched it since, and this was episodes ago. But I really want to share it because it's so beautiful, and, well, I don't know if it'll encourage me to pick it up again, but it's always good to take your whips out, your, whips that you've put away and honestly forgot you had. It's always good to take them out and just think about them and appreciate them, and, then maybe when you're ready to start something new, you might think, oh, you know what? I want to pick up that whip and give it another shot and give it some love. So I'm going to show this one to you because I would like to start on this again soon. It is lace, however, and I've realized that lace is, besides intarsia, lace is my least favorite thing to knit, and I do enjoy some lace, but I really like lace that is easy to remember and simple and repeats itself, short repeats, and just really easy, because I find I struggle to remember lace charts, and I don't like knitting stuff where I have to look at my pattern constantly, and then when I set it down I have to look at the knitting and study it to figure out where I've left off. So that's the only problem with this pattern. the pattern itself is gorgeous. It's the Haligarth Shawl by Gudrun Johnson, and it's just these beautiful Shetland tree pattern, like Shetland tree pattern repeated. So it'll just look like this, but bigger. And I just think, I saw this, I think it was published by Brooklyn Tweed, and I thought that's my kind of lace because it's just this beautiful repeat over and over again, but it's actually a long chart. And as I say, I really struggle to remember where I am and to read the lace and to figure out the logic of it. So I always have to look at the chart for this one. So it's taken me a long time to knit this much, and it'll probably take me a while to pick it up again and figure out where I am. So I haven't touched it, but it's just so pretty. This is, I think this color's called Pine. It's, I'm knitting it in Rowan Felted Tweed, which is a combination of wool, alpaca, and viscose. And I don't think it says the name of the color on this. The shade is 158. It's a dark foresty green with flecks of orange, gray, and blue, and charcoal in it. It's just, there, it's just really nice. And the pattern's lovely. I can't wait to have this. Like, this will just be a gorgeous shawl to own. It's just taking me a long time to knit. So, but I love it. I still love it, and I wanted to share that with you. Maybe I'll pick it up when I feel a little more well rested. I don't know when that will be, but that's the other thing with laces. I find I really have to have my wits about me. I have to be paying attention, and I have to have the attention capacity to knit the right thing, but also be able to fix it if I make a mistake. So that's why this has been just sitting in my whip basket for a really long time. Yeah, there are other things in the whip basket. There is an Intarsia project. They're knit in bulky weight yarns, so that one's, it looks great and it's a gift for someone, so I really ought to knit on that more often. But as I say, Intarsia is my least favorite thing to knit that I've encountered so far, and combined with bulky weight yarn on straight vinyl needles. I think it's vinyl. It's those gray needles that are covered in like a plasticky, grippy coating. I really should get rid of them and get metal needles so that the bulky yarn slides better. That would be a way to make that project more appealing to me. So I might have to do that. But in any case, it involves Intarsia, and yeah, I don't enjoy that process, but the end product will be really neat, I think. So I'll share that one with you when it's done. The last thing I wanted to share today is just another book that I got. This is the this is the Sandnes Garn issue number 2202, and it's called Meek Til Dama, and I found this at a yarn shop in Canada, just online. I looked for it online. The reason why I wanted this is because it has a really nice slip over pattern in it, and slip over vest. It's one that I think will look good with a lot of different things underneath it, which is important to me. And it isn't fitted like this. It's not like a sweater that just doesn't have sleeves. It's more open. So it's kind of unusual in that sense. It's an unusual garment. It's kind of like an accessory, but I think it'll fit better over top of various types of clothes. Whereas these kinds of vests that are just basically fit like a sweater without sleeves, for me, I struggle to find the right kind of thing to wear underneath it. So I'll show this to you. It's called the Amy Slipover, if you're looking for it. So you can see that it is a turtleneck, or a mock, it might be a mock neck, I don't really know. And then it's kind of like the neck warmer style I was telling you about, but it's bigger. So it goes all the way down at the back, almost full length, little cropped. It's more cropped at the front, and then it ties here. So this is also really customizable, I would think, for, you know, the length of your torso, the width of your body, whether or not you want it tied or buttoned or whatever. You can really, I think, make this work for you. So that's why I got this book, was pretty much for that pattern, because I couldn't find any single patterns that were similar enough to it, and I thought that this design was so practical. I didn't really want to knit any other type of vest before trying this one. So I got it for that, but I figured there are a couple other things I could knit in here. And I might be crazy, but I'm leaning towards knitting one of the dress patterns. This is the Hazel dress, and it's an oversized dress knit in their Alpaca, Sandus Garn's Alpaca. I would probably knit it in a different yarn. It's a brushed alpaca, I think, and I'm more a fan of yarns that are a bit more hard wearing, and I feel like those brushed yarns are, the lightness of the fabric is created mechanically, it's not inherent to the yarn, and I feel like that process of brushing, or however they create that fluff, it's basically damaging the yarn, and you know, it's adding wear to the yarn that wasn't there before. And so I just feel like they might create garments that don't have much longevity, and I'm not going to knit a dress that isn't going to last a long time, that's going to show wear and tear before an appropriate amount of time has passed. So I'd probably use a different yarn. I don't know what yarn I'd use yet, but I like oversized out garments. This is really oversized, but I think I would like it as a dress. So I could knit that, and then they have another dress that's really sweet. It's also oversized. This is called the Cherry dress. It has these sort of bell sleeves, cropped bell sleeves, and this version is long, but I think this would look really sweet as a short dress. Even a mini dress, I think it would be really cute. So I could see myself making that. And then there's one other sweater that I really like in here. It's, again, super oversized. I would probably make the sleeves shorter, and honestly, I don't know if I would like the sleeves as is. They're really wide, and I find that very uncomfortable. I find, especially when I'm at home, I don't want to wear oversized sleeves because they just get in the way of all the things that I'm doing inside. But if I'm going outside on a walk, I find oversized garments extremely comfortable. So I'm on the fence about this one. I like the way it looks on the model though. This is the Lou sweater, and it's just a top-down raglan, but with oversized measurements. So the neck, of course, will fit well, and the shoulder line as well, but then everything else is pretty oversized about it. But I do like the way it looks. I think there's another picture that maybe shows it a bit better. So there it is on the model. You can see the sleeves kind of ruffling at the bottom because they're so big, but that can be customized. I could knit them shorter. So that's one that I'm considering as well, because this book was kind of like the cost of two individual patterns. So I figure I need to knit at least 2 patterns from this book to make it worth it. And yeah, but I can, you know, there's several in here that I would knit. And actually there's one more. There's the Jules or Euless sweater. It's a mohair yoke, lace yoke. So that's really pretty too. I could see myself knitting that. It's very beautiful. It's oversized, but not extreme. So it's very pretty. So that's that. I think that's everything that I would like to share today. Hopefully I'll have some new cast-ons next time. I'll certainly have the Kate Davies sweater finished by then, and I'm sure I will have more plans to share with you. I recently purchased some patterns for Lettlopi, and again, one of my favorite yarns to knit with. And I don't have the Lettlopi for these sweaters yet, so I'm just deciding on the colors, and maybe once I've knit up a few more things in a few months and used up some of my stash and dealt with some of the projects that I've been wanting to knit for a while now, I'll move on to the Lettlopi projects, because it's very tempting to start on them right away because it's my favorite yarn. Very tempting to start on them right away, but I don't already have the yarn, so I have to knit with what I have so far. So yeah, I hope that you are very well and enjoying your knitting projects and your crafting projects. It's sort of a crafty season that we're in now, and I would be interested if you would feel so inclined to share in the comments what non-knitting crafts you are working on, if you are working on any such things. I do think people, even if you don't really do some, a wide variety of crafts, come Christmas time, people tend to try new things and yeah, have fun with making things when you're inside a little bit more, or maybe anticipating the holiday and wanting a project to work on, or something to do with children to entertain them over the holiday. I would love to know some of those ideas that you have for crafts. Yeah, that'd be really fun to learn about. So yeah, thank you once again for joining me here. You can also find me on Instagram as Songbird Sade. I share knitting related posts, but also other aspects of things that I enjoy, such as gardening. And you can also find me a little bit on Ravelry as Songbird Sade Knits. I have lots of projects posted on there, but I don't keep it up to date. So here is the best place to find me if you want to know what I'm knitting on. So thanks once again for joining me, and I look very much forward to the next time we can sit down together and talk about knitting. I wish you all the best. Until then, take care. Bye.